Welcome everyone to the 33rd? Wow.
It is.
33rd. Wasn't sure.
It may be a question in your mind. It's not a question for us. It is the 33rd episode.
See, we get here and it's never a question for Phil, but I'm like, is it that? But Phil is confident about what number podcast we're on, and it's the 33rd. So.
And Caroline behind the camera gave us a thumbs up, so it's definitely got to be 33rd.
33rd. Yeah, so we're going to talk about Cain and Abel, and you gave a sermon on giving your best, giving your first fruit, and it came out of Genesis chapter 4, little family quarreling and other things going on there. So can you introduce the sermon and what we're talking about?
Absolutely. So this is in the series of like win the day, and what does that look like each and every day? Like, how do we actually apply the Bible in a way that helps us define, are we really moving toward the direction we should? Are we really winning the day? And I think one of the things we have to do to win the day is give your best. Like, that's not some cliche that we say for sports or work or anything. Like, I think God is actually looking for that. And I think the reason I say that is Genesis chapter 4. Cain brings an offering to God. It's the first recorded offering, and he just gives some fruit. But that's what he works with. He works with the soil. Abel brings an offering, and he brings some of the first, of his livestock, some of the best, the fat portion. Like, he brings his best, and says God looks on his offering and is pleased and is acceptable, but Cain's is not. So God rejects Cain's offering. And some of us jokingly will go, yeah, well, Cain brought fruit. Who wants that? But it's really, I think the heart of it is Cain just brought some of what he had done. Like, Abel looked over all that he had and said, how do I communicate to God what I think about him through this offering? And what I want to communicate to God is, I think you're worth my best. And so that's what he did. When Cain just looks over his fruits, he goes, well, I've got some stuff left over. Let me just take some of that. And what he's communicating to God is, I'll just give you from what I have left over. When Abel's living out in faith by going, God, I'm going to give you my best and my first. And that's going to cost me a little bit. But I trust you so much, and I want to communicate what I think about you through this offering. And that as just this beautiful outline of what it looks like for you and I. Like, we have the temptation to have the heart of Cain so easily to, give God whatever's left over or whatever allows us to remain comfortable. Whereas to have the heart of Abel, that challenges us to live in faith. Like, God, I'm going to go look and try to give you my best in my finances or my talents or my time. I'm going to look to give you my best. And that requires faith because there's a cost to doing that. Yeah. When we have the heart of Cain, we give to God, there's no cost because we've already taken care of everything else we need. He just gets whatever's left over.
Right. I love what you said about what Abel was asking himself was, what can I do to communicate my love for God? And then Cain approaches it from this other way of how can I check the box off, to get around this obstacle, basically. And it made me think of last night. We had the Friendsgiving dinner, and there was this lady and her husband there, and they were talking about how they met, and she was like, well, I'm not really sure if I'm into him, and stuff, and when they first started dating, and what the guy did was he asked her 5 favorite movies, and that week he went and watched all 5 of them, and then came around that weekend and told her what he thought of all of them, and then took her out of this nice restaurant and stuff, and
bought her tickets to a Broadway play, I think.
Right, it was the Lion King. Yeah, I was like, what a stud.
Yeah,
and she was like, not sure if I'm into him, but I mean, if he's gonna put some money down, show that he's gonna pursue her. I just thought it was so funny, but it ties right into what we're talking about. Is the guy was like, man, what can I do to show her that I'm serious about this relationship?
Yeah.
And I think it's the same way. And it was his joy to take her to the Lion King, play. And it was her joy to be pursued. And it's just like that with us and the Lord. It can be our joy to give him our best and pursue him and allow him to love us in that. It's not like this, well, I guess if I want a girlfriend, then I better do these things. Like if it's not your joy to be with that person, then you probably shouldn't be doing that. But
Right.
But you know what I mean. So I think that's a good metaphor.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that I've ever given a message on this before, but like when I was just preparing, God was like, "Hey, we need to do a message on giving your best to God, me, and we need to talk about Cain and Abel because they go together." And I was like, didn't see that one coming, you know.
Yeah.
But I'm a man who loves the Old Testament, so I dug right in and really felt like what you're saying. It all lines up. It kind of gives this beautiful illustration of what God's trying to tell us.
Yeah, yeah. And like you said, like it's not a money sermon or,
No.
or just a money sermon like it can be. And I think that we can draw a ton of different conclusions from the story of Cain and Abel, and like, are we giving our best financially? Are we giving our best at work? Are we giving our best in our marriage and our fatherhood, or motherhood? Like the way that we're investing in our children, or well, in your children. I don't have kids, but you know what I mean. Like,
Yeah.
The people that you're mentoring or whatever it may be. And we were talking earlier about like, what is a good way to grow in that area? Like, how can I give my best in a certain area? And I was thinking, like, when I was driving, and I was thinking about what we were going to talk about today, I was like, man, what if Union County, which is the county in which we operate, if you don't know, what if the entire county was just one piece of asphalt, and then like places to go to work and like places where you live, but like the asphalt butted up to your house, and there were no lines on the road, there were no guardrails, nothing, but everyone was driving around getting to these different places. Like, it would be total chaos. It would look like Blairsville after church on Sunday, or Walmart parking lot.
Yeah.
But yeah, so like we need structure is what I'm getting at. Like we need the lines on the road. We need the guardrails. We need the speed limits in order to like get things done the right way. And this also is not like a message of like you need to perform a certain amount in order to be like counted as righteous or anything like that. But like there is a certain like responsibility as a believer to like do things, like God doesn't want us to sit on the side and like watch him build the kingdom. Like he wants to invite us into that. So I think it would be good for us to like write down the things that we think we can, work on in the realm of like giving our best.
Absolutely. When you're sharing that, it made me think of an episode of Seinfeld where Kramer gets this bright idea where he's going to go repaint the 4-lane. And so there's obviously, they're in New York and there's all these lanes of traffic. And he's like, I don't have enough space. So like he's like driving down the road with like a paint roller and painting over the lines to create bigger lanes.
Right.
And he's like, oh, it's going to be beautiful. We're going to have all this space. And he causes this massive traffic backup because there's less lanes now. Mm-hmm. And that more space didn't help anything. It just created more problems. And I think sometimes like what you're saying, to illustrate it, in a different way, is if we're not really intentional to give ourselves a clear direction, it's just going to become chaos for us. And I'm really glad you brought that up. I think it's super encouraging for me. Hopefully as the listener, that's very encouraging for you. But like, what we're saying is sometimes you're just thinking it. It's time to put it on paper. Yeah. Like put some effort and intentionality behind it. Otherwise, we have a lot of great ideas that die in our head, because we didn't write them down. We didn't put them into practice. We didn't give it a go. And when it comes to giving our best, maybe that's one of the things that you need to start with as a listener is, hey, I'm going to write it down. Like I'm going to put some effort behind it.
Right.
I'm going to make it real.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe giving your best isn't the things that you write down, but it's actually just writing something down is like one step in that direction of like being better in that area.
Yeah, because you even brought up before we were talking about this, the story where Jesus points out to his disciples the woman who gives 2 coins. It was everything she had. And the people are like, man, she gave like next to nothing. And she's like, wait, stop, hold up a minute.
Right.
She gave everything. That's all she has. And when we were given this message about, giving your best, I try to encourage people, your best is going to look differently in seasons. And it's going to look different than other people, depending on their skills and talents and gifts and finances. It's not going to look the same in the financial world, but our heart will always look the same. The heart's either I want to give God my best or not.
Yeah.
And so for us as people, I think we don't need to look and see, oh man, that person gave 2 coins, or look what little time they give, or whatever it is. We need to leave that up to the Lord. Like, God knows if they're giving their best or not.
Right.
And all we're supposed to do is encourage and challenge each other to give our best.
Yeah, and if we're like upset if someone's not living up to the standard that we think we have the authority to place on them, like, would it be better to call them into like serving more or doing whatever by telling them what they're not doing, or by encouraging them, you know? So I think that's something to be careful about.
Absolutely. I mean, think about it, you know, the example we were talking about, you know, Friendsgiving, you know, and the people who hosted it, I mean, they got 3 small kids running around. And, you know, their time is going to look differently than, you know, Kayla and I. You know, we were married and have no kids. Like, the play out of time looks differently between those people, but the heart can look the exact same of like, man, I just want to give God my best.
Right.
You know, and I think that's where we just have to go, man, I really want the best for someone else. Like, I really want them to experience everything God has for them. I really want them to have the opportunity to just give God their best. And I'm rooting for them to do that. But I don't always know how that's going to play out. You know, every season of life is different. And I think we've got to get into the mode of rooting for people, encouraging them and challenge them to like, hey, you know, give God your best without knowing exactly what that may look like. But the Lord does.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think I kind of want to pivot toward like workplace for a second and talk about like, yeah, you you don't want to put your identity in like how well you perform, because we're always going to fall short. Like the Israelites tried that for a long time and always failed, you know, with the law. Like they just couldn't live up to it, and that's why we needed Jesus. But yeah, like if you're looking at this from a secular perspective or from in the realm of Christianity, like what person has more influence in the workplace? Is it the person where you go into work and they are unkempt, you know, they hate their job, they're vocally miserable, like they just tell you how bad they don't want to be at work that day, and like their performance is not good at work? Does he have like a lot of influence in the workplace, or is it the person who is on time every day, is like getting his work done, is easy to be around, and has influence in the office? Like he's gonna have influence. He or she is gonna have influence in the office because it's easy to be around them, you know, and they're like performing and easy to look up to. And so if you're looking at it, you know, if you're a believer or not, like if you want influence in the workplace, then like you're gonna have to like fight for it. And as believers, like God has called us to influence people, to be compelling. And if we're operating in that, then like we need the influence, you know, in order to like mentor people and this sort of thing.
Yeah, complete lack of influence is not very compelling.
Right.
You know, and I think the example you gave is so true of like wherever we're at, if people notice if we give our best or not, you know, and people respect that, you know, even though they may get beaten in a sports game or anything, a lot of times, you know, when people notice you're giving your best, they really respect that. Right. And so I'm totally with you. I think it's a beautiful example of in the workplace, or, you know, I think some people just need to give themselves a grace in a relationship, or, you know, in a family situation. Like, if you're giving your best, like, what else do you want that person to do? You know, and, you know, that's why in the atmosphere we work in at church, like, sometimes people ask me, like, if something's not going right, like, are you stressed? Are you anxious? And I'm like, no, because I know the people I work with, and I know they're giving their best. Like, what else am I supposed to go ask these people to do?
Yeah.
If I know they're giving me their best, like, all I'm there to do is just encourage, and what we get is what we're going to get.
Yeah.
You know, that's the reason I don't get overly frustrated or anything. It's just, I believe in this team. Like, I believe the people that God's brought here, and we're working together. Like, there's nothing else for me to ask of them. And that's the other thing, though, when I'm looking to plug people in and serve, I don't go out and recruit people I don't think are going to give their best. Like, I don't go looking, especially after working and recruiting for years, I don't go looking for talent. I look for people who are going to give their best. Because even if you have a lot of talent, but you're lazy or you give it a half-hearted effort, you're actually toxic to a culture. But if you're someone who gives their best, it pushes everyone else to do the same.
Right.
You know, and so that's what we're looking for here at Vertical is like, you don't have to be the most talented to serve on the team. You just have to go, man, I really want to give God my best in this area, and I want him to use it for his glory. And that's going to fit in very well with us because that's who we want to be. Like, everything we're doing is not for ultimately even each other. It's not ultimately for this church. Everything we're doing, we're serving, we're going, I want God to look down and go, this person's trying to give me their best in this area. And that's who we are.
Yeah. And one other thing too is like if you say like give your best in this area, and it made me think about all the things that I'm involved in, which are probably 3 too many. But like if you're trying to give your best in 7 different directions, it's probably not the best, you know? And so it may be good to like think about, man, am I over involved? And like where do I need to slow down in one area so that I can be better in another? Like if you're spending too much time with work and not enough time with the family, or you know, vice versa, like your job is failing because you're just like sleeping in every day. I don't know, you know. So it may be good to evaluate, am I giving my best in too many areas, you know?
Yeah, and I think that's a good point. Like, as I've grown in leader roles and opportunities, what I'm seeing is more like, hey, I really am getting, as I get to have more and more experience, I'm really identifying, hey, there's a couple things I think I'm really good at. Like, I think if I had to narrow down some of the main skills and gifts I have, I think I've got them. And like you're saying, I could try to be good at like 30 things, and I think I could be. Or I could try to be like elite in a couple things. And I would encourage people, like, if God's given you like a couple real talents, lean into them.
Yeah.
Like, lean in, grow, develop those talents, and go, God, like, you're going to get my best in these things. The things you bless me with is these talents, like, I'm going to give them back to you. I'm going to do the best I can. I'm going to maximize them. Because I don't know if doing 50 things at an average rate is really giving God our best.
Yeah.
You know? And here's the other thing. You have other people around you who could be good at those things, like empower people. That's like why we want to be a church that develop leaders. Like, I'm not, as the pastor, good at everything, but I think I'm look at a church that's beautifully gifted in so many areas. Like, if we're willing to train and equip and empower people, there's a lot of people who are way better at certain things than I am. And as a leader, I would never want to hold them back from giving God their best because they don't even have an opportunity.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think too, like if God has gifted you in one, say God has gifted you in one single area, like what is Satan going to come against in your life to keep the kingdom from moving forward? It's that gift, you know? If you're good at something, of course, Satan is going to push against that. And so, like, I don't know, if you feel insecure in an area that you know you're good at, I would just pray through that and ask God to, like, I don't know, strengthen you and empower you in that, and get around people who are going to encourage you, because it can be detrimental to like your influence, you know. So yeah,
That's good.
but yeah, one other thing I was thinking about was the mapping, or like how Cain and Abel's relationship maps right onto our relationship with the Lord, in the sense that. Not that one is killing the other, but that's exactly what happened. So like, I was thinking about it, and I was like, man, Abel did everything right in the eyes of the Lord, and like literally gave the best that he possibly could. And Cain, you know, tried to, like, I guess, negotiate and get around and like check the box off. And I was thinking about how that relates, like, in this metaphor of like Jesus being Abel in the picture, and then like us being Cain, and how like we're the broken human who has messed up, you know, and Jesus is the son who offered the sacrifice, you know, the right way. I thought that was a really good metaphor.
No, I agree as well. Yeah, I'm totally with you. I don't know that I've ever thought until now, like, how much there really is the power of imagery and application in the story of Cain and Abel until recently. So I'm glad you pointed that out.
Yeah. Yeah, and like and also, I think that offerings and sacrifices, I think the Catholic Church does a really good job of symbolizing with physical representations spiritual realities. And offerings and sacrifices is a great way to do that. But the Israelites and the Jews during Jesus' time, like we know that they wanted like someone to come and overthrow Rome, the Roman Empire. But Jesus comes and does not that, and actually like offers himself in the greatest sacrifice with his life. I was talking to a friend this weekend, and he was quoting N.T. Wright and what he was teaching on. And Jesus didn't come and overthrow Rome, the physical world around him, but he came and overthrew the spiritual world that we couldn't see. And in the sermon, you talked about like trusting in the things that we can't see, as opposed to trusting in the things that we can see in this world. And like if we're holding on so tightly to the things that we can see and not offering them to the Lord, in which we can't see, then like we're gonna end up like Cain, instead of Abel in this situation. And so later on, it's just so cool. Like since Jesus overthrew the spiritual forces, later on, comes Constantine, and he was the Roman emperor who was a Christian.
Yeah.
And so there's significance to focusing on the things that we can't see as opposed to what we can around us.
So it's interesting you bring that up. I had no intention about talking about this, but you hit on something that we quietly but intentionally do at Vertical. And with Vertical, you've heard, if you've been with us for a while, like you've heard me not like endorse politicians or political parties or anything like that. And you've even heard me teach, like, don't let politics become a high place. Like, don't let them become something we worship. And one of the reasons we do that is because I don't believe you can legislate sin away. Like, the Old Testament teaches us this idea that, like, there's no law, there's no governing, there's no political party that can remove sin. We happen in the Old Testament. I don't believe it can happen now. I mean, think about it. Like, we have laws against some heinous things, like murder is wrong, rape is wrong, racism is wrong. Like, all these things have laws against them, they still happen. And because sin isn't a legislative issue, it's a heart issue. And so at Vertical, like, we're going to not try to tackle the sin of this world through any political party. We would love for political parties to honor and submit to Jesus. We would love that. But we understand they're not the answer to the problems we face. We go, the kingdom of God coming down to earth and changing the kingdoms here exist. That's where it's going to be powerful. Right. Jesus is the one who can change someone's sin in their heart. And there's no law that we can try to put in place to stop that. We should try to have righteous laws. But if we want to see people's hearts change, if we want to see things really change, it's not going to come through politics. It's going to come through a relationship with Jesus. Yeah. And that's why we try to be very clear. If you're asking us to endorse anything, we endorse the kingdom of God and not a political party. If you're asking us to endorse any kind of candidate, it's going to be Jesus. Because we truly believe, not in some cliche way, we believe he's literally the only hope for our hearts and minds to change. Yeah. We believe Jesus is the only hope for transformation to take place. And that's why we're going to be so clear that we don't want anyone to ever be confused who we're really throwing our influence behind. Yeah. It's Jesus. Yeah. Because life is short. We get one shot at this. And we want to leave no doubt that Jesus is of the greatest value. Yeah. And so we hadn't planned on talking about that, but I'm glad you brought it up, because that's why we do what we do, kind of quietly and intentionally, like not delving into the world of politics. That's a good thing, but it's not going to answer the biggest problems we see as a world. Yeah, absolutely. Like, we're living in a reformed version of where the Jews were when Jesus was here. Like for the people who want to overthrow the government of America, like if you disagree with it, then like you need to be praying for the spiritual forces that are at work, and that's where we need to be focusing. And it's not on the things that we can see in front of us, but it's in the spiritual world. Absolutely. Yeah. So awesome. Well, thank you so much as a listener for joining us today. Thank you to Caroline working behind the cameras. Thank you, Desi, for being a host on the show. We got 33 episodes in.
Come on.
And thank you to Austin Watson behind the scenes, all things tech, media, and editing for the videos. And most of all, thank you as a listener for giving your time. We pray that this podcast, Caroline, Desi, Austin, myself, we put in the effort and time because we want to add value to your life. Yeah. We want you to be able to look at this podcast and say, this is helping me understand and grow closer to Jesus. And if that's happening, please leave a review, like it, subscribe to it. That's super helpful for us to try to share this message. And maybe you do. Maybe send it to a friend if you think this would be helpful. We'd be honored to help participate in you being compelling for Jesus. So thank you for your time, and we will see you next time.
See you next time.